Hello, this is James, and this is a recording to accompany the teaching online during a pandemic, perhaps the first time Tech Tuesday. So the video you're watching is available on my website, condor.depaul.edu/jmore/tech/teaching online. Handouts there along with the video. So we are teaching online during a pandemic, but don't panic. Keep calm and carry on. We're going to be okay, and that's the message you definitely want to convey to your students. However, your expectations of how you're going to survive the apocalypse are perhaps different to your reality. So I would suggest keeping things simple. Things will definitely go wrong. You will have less time than you think, but you can always make improvements the next time you teach your course. So for spring, we went with asynchronous. That meant that everything was pre-recorded content. Nothing was live, nothing at a set time. However, Zoom is available, which sometimes might fail, for things that are optional to students, like an exam review or a fun meetup. And the idea is these events are recorded, they're short and offered at a convenient time. But with asynchronous, the expectation is our students don't need to be online at a specific time on a specific day. Why did we make this decision? Well, as the dorms were closed, those students who were residing there no longer had reliable internet access. There were students who were using computer labs, libraries, and internet cafes for internet access. They no longer have access to those. Some students don't have access to a computer, so they're a little bit stressed and frustrated at the moment. Those who do have a computer maybe sharing that with multiple family members. And then we're seeing some students having to use their mobile phone for internet access. Again, those who are living at home may have school children who are using their computers or need to be schooled during the day, which means that the family member will find it very inconvenient to be online at a particular time. And then we see students scrambling for paid work. They don't want to turn down the opportunity to get some money to pay for their mortgage, for their rent, for their books, and because of that, it's difficult if we tell them that they have to be online at a particular time. So where do we send you and your students if there are problems? For faculty, the best place to go will be fitz@depaul.edu via email with any questions you may have about technology not working as intended or planning to use technology. Your students we should send to the help desk, so helpdesk.depaul.edu, and then we have the remote teaching options portal, which contains webinars, documentation, videos, everything you might need for going online. So I want to share some recommendations with you. We are going to be at home, social distancing for quite some time. So this means if something bad happens to your computer, it's going to be very difficult to repair that quickly. I would recommend that you get into the habit of backing up your data. And there are two ways that I'd recommend. Method number one is a physical backup. So you can get a Seagate backup slim 2 terabyte drive for about $70 at the moment. This is a way that you can back up files within your immediate location. You don't need to rely upon the internet. You don't need to rely upon a service to do this for you. So I would recommend that. I'd also recommend backing up your files to the cloud if you feel comfortable putting your files in the cloud. We have a professional account with Box with unlimited storage, and every faculty member, every staff member, and every student has access to OneDrive. Not unlimited access there, but large enough for many. So I'd recommend backing up in at least 2 of those places. You'll be using email more working online than perhaps you would do when teaching face-to-face. So again, a couple of recommendations we're sharing. Email doesn't guarantee delivery. Quite often email will go into spam, quarantine, or other boxes rather than the inbox. However, at DePaul, any email address that ends in @DePaul will get delivered to DePaul accounts. Your students are now using DePaul accounts as well. So if you are a person who's been using a third-party email provider, such as Gmail or Yahoo, I would heartily recommend that you use your professional DePaul account, because this will ensure that your emails are delivered when you deliver to students using a DePaul account. It also means that your students won't necessarily receive the wrong message from you. I think there's some danger in us not using our regular professional accounts to teach. However, how can we reduce email? What I would recommend as a way to make the job of teaching a little bit more efficient is to tell students to post their questions to the discussion board rather than emailing me, unless the question is personal or embarrassing. This results in fewer duplicate questions to your inbox asking about deadlines or clarification. It also means that students who might be reticent in reaching out can take advantage of seeing what others are asking on the discussion board. If you're sending out email announcements to your students, I would also heartily recommend that you copy and paste those announcements into the home page of your Desire to Learn course, where students can see those. Be aware that the speed of your internet connection will impact you as we are teaching over spring and summer. If you're using Zoom, Zoom requires at a minimum 1 megabytes per second upload and download. For good performance, you want a minimum of 5 megabits per second upload and download. Now, some of you may be using what's called asymmetric DSL. With that, you get fast download speeds, so this means your Netflix works as intended, but as soon as you upload something, you have a vastly more slower process of putting that file online. This will impact you if you're using Zoom, because you are sending out data, sending out video with Zoom. So if you have ADSL, you may want to talk to your internet service provider about changing that and getting symmetric DSL. If you're using dial-up or if you're using satellite, Zoom is not going to be an option for you. And if available, you may want to consider getting a faster cable or DSL connection. If you're using cellular as a way to be online, be aware that an hour of Zoom will probably consume about 800 megabytes of your plan. So this can be a little bit expensive if your intention is to use Zoom on your cell phone or using a hotspot. If you have Wi-Fi at home, we heartily recommend that you use a wired Ethernet cable, because your Wi-Fi connection will be impacted by various other devices in your household. Using a microwave will degrade your Wi-Fi signal. If your neighbor has Wi-Fi, your Wi-Fi signal will be degraded. So to get the best possible sort of outcome from using services like Zoom or uploading content to D2L and Panopto, we recommend using an Ethernet cable, plugging this into your laptop or desktop PC, and plugging the other end into the modem or router that comes into your house. So if you're teaching online for the first time, there's a couple of recommendations we'd like to share with you. To begin, we have a Driehaus Online Starter Pack template that you can apply to any of the courses you're teaching. If you want to look at this before committing to using it, you can email me and I will add you as an observer to that course. But if you want to use this, you should use the D2L copy request form and ask for the Driehaus Online Starter Pack. This will then put this template on an empty course, and it will give you scaffolding, resources, and content that you can use in your course. Now, you will want to modify this slightly. We've got content in there that you can hide, or you can rename, you can move around, you can change, you can upload sort of new material to this. So you'll want to adapt it, but if you want it, in any Desire to Learn course, click on Edit Course in the top navigation, click on D2L Request Forms, and then make that request. So again, for those who are new to teaching online, we've got some recommendations. This is the cheat sheet, and on the next couple of slides, I'll walk through the content in more detail. So we recommend to those of you teaching online for the first time to start at the end. Rather than concentrating on creating content on a weekly basis, think about how you're going to certify that your students have knowledge, skills, and abilities. To do this, there's probably some form of assessment that you're going to perform. Once you know what that assessment is, you can think about the experimentation that your students are going to do, the ways that they're going to interact, the way that they can make mistakes, the way that you can give them feedback. And from that, we can think about the instructional materials that you want to provide to your students. So start at the back. So thinking about those assessments, we have a couple of recommendations. The easiest assessment you can provide to your students is a take-home. And here we suggest giving your students a week to work on this file or document, and then to upload this to the D2L submissions folder in your course. Or you could use a quiz. Because your course is asynchronous, your exam can be timed, but you make it available for your students to take for perhaps a week. That way your students can schedule their time appropriately and take that quiz. If you're concerned about security, you can apply Respondus Monitor to your exams, and I'll talk about that in a couple of slides. Your students could create a presentation. So here, all students in the College of Business have access to both Panopto and VoiceThread as a way to make their recordings. However, if your students are happy using another option, perhaps they have video recording capabilities, let them use that and upload to D2L. And then lastly, your students can do projects. Again, this is an option that we typically make available to students in regular face-to-face classes. You can do this in D2L and get them to upload to submissions. So for those of you who are interested in using Respondus Monitor, Respondus Monitor is a way in which the webcam is switched on during a quiz, the microphone is switched on, and AI is used to record and analyze what a student is doing during that quiz. If the student gets up or moves out of frame, that recording is flagged. The student is instructed that they shouldn't do this, and you can decide when the quiz is submitted to you whether the student will lose points or the entire grade for actions that have been recorded and flagged. Now obviously this adds a little bit of workload to faculty, but it's there as a tool to provide you with data so you can think about how your exams are being conducted and whether students are doing things that they shouldn't do during those exams. There are three options for using this. You can read the Teaching Commons instructions and then adapt D2L and switch that on. Or you could ask FITS to enable this to an existing D2L quiz that you have. There's a request form on that previous page that allows you to do this. Or if you're new to D2L and you don't know how to make a quiz, you can again use a request form to ask FITS help you make that quiz and then enable Respondus Monitor on that quiz. So moving on, we recommend that you provide a more detailed syllabus in your online class. If you think about face-to-face, you typically are constraining your syllabus to 1 or 2 sides of A4 because it's going to be printed and you don't have the budget or paper to print out lots and lots of extraneous information. With online, you want to ensure that your students understand fully what's expected of them, and we don't have that physical limitation. We also don't have the opportunity that you would have in a regular face-to-face class to provide some additional instruction that tells students what your more explicit expectations are that weren't on the syllabus. So we suggest making your syllabus a little bit more detailed. If you're using our template, we have structured content that you can borrow from. We also suggest that you rethink deadlines. So traditionally, you might have said that an exercise is due at 11:59 p.m. and that's going to be when you're probably sleeping. We suggest that you choose a deadline like 10 a.m., which is when you're ready to grade, when you're sat in front of your computer, ready to see how well your students have done in the exercise. If your students have sent you frantic messages saying, I have a problem, I need an extension, things aren't working, I can't upload this. These all arrived in your email inbox when you were sleeping. But if you change your deadline to 10 a.m., they're arriving as you're in front of your computer, and you can deal with them in the moment, which reduces your student stress and also reduces your stress. If you're using a book, then your publisher most likely has test bank material that you can use in D2L. If you follow these 5 stages that you see on screen, you can upload that content into your course and use that for midterms, finals, or weekly quizzes. So we mentioned earlier that you can use the discussion board as a way to reduce email overload. With an asynchronous course, your discussion board is a great way to add value to the course and get your students to interact, and it's a great way for you to learn about them. So we recommend using the discussion board. If you are a little bit worried that you need to create video, realize that there are other options available to you. So DePaul has a subscription to LinkedIn Learning, which was previously known as lynda.com. Here, there are millions of hours of video that you can add to D2L. By linking out or potentially embedding video, you don't have to create these resources. They've been created for you. So LinkedIn Learning has hours of videos that explain soft topics like interviewing, but also hard topics about how to use SPSS, SAS, or Excel. So this is a way that your workload can be reduced. Again, please recognize that our students are now anywhere in the world. As campuses were closed down, as dormitories were closed, some students returned to their family homes, which could be in a different time zone in the US, or could be in a different country. So this is something that is worth recognizing and perhaps surveying your students to find out where they are. But you're not going this route alone. Recognize that FITS, Faculty Instructional Technology Support, is there to help you. They have created a portal at go.depaul.edu/remote teaching that contains opportunities to sign up for webinars, to watch videos, to view documentation, and to look at best practices about teaching online. If you're teaching multiple sections, we advise that you combine your courses into one Desire to Learn course. And you do this again through the D2L request forms. So when you do this, you're no longer doing double or triple work where you are putting the same content on multiple courses. You put it on one course that all of those sections have access to. And then the last piece of advice in this area is to recognize that when we write for the web, we write differently. When students read material on the printed page, they largely read sequentially or in a serial fashion. But when people read on the web, they sort of go into hunt and peck mode, where they're not reading sequentially or serially. So because of this, to ensure that your students understand your content more readily, we suggest that you write in short sentences with short paragraphs, you use active language, simple structure, and you use headings and bullets to sort of provide more white space on the page. So that was recommendations for those teaching online for the first time. We mentioned video in passing in terms of talking about LinkedIn Learning. If you do want to create video yourselves, be aware that you're going to hit the triple constraint. So a triple constraint is where we have time, quality, and cost, with the popular adage that out of fast, good, and cheap, you get to choose 2 options. So if you want something that is quick and cheap, quality is going to be low. If you want something that's quick and high quality, it's going to be expensive. But if you want quality and cheap, it's going to be a slow process to do this. We suggest that you may want to rethink use of educational video. Rather than creating instructional video, you could use video as a mechanism to provide feedback. And in D2L, if you're using the submissions folder, you can post individual video to that area via the insert stuff and then the Panopto in stuff button. That means that your students will see personal video for them. And this is a way that you can create rich content that is perhaps just as quick as writing written content which is problematic to write and problematic to understand. If you are interested in creating the most appropriate educational video that works to educate your students, then Multimedia Learning by Richard E. Mayer is the resource to look at. In that book, he posits 12 principles to create effective multimedia that works to educate. Now, if you don't want to read the book, I've taken some of those elements into a video presentation that you can find at condor.paul.edu/jmore/DPUTC 2018. So some of those recommendations he makes are the fact that you don't need to be on camera at all time. The research suggests that a constant presence on camera can be a distraction to the student, so only include yourself in non-verbal communication and presence where presence truly adds value. If you're doing that, be yourself. Talk in a friendly way in which your passion for the subject matter and teaching is easily apparent. But practicing your script and delivery can help greatly, as does your physical position and posture. So you want your diaphragm to be uncompressed and for you to be comfortable. So sometimes this is achieved by perching on a stool or standing. If filming via a webcam, your camera should be at eye level. And then these are the webcams that we recommend to faculty. These are various Logitech models that plug in via USB to your laptop or desktop PC. If you need to write and you don't have a device that has touch or stylus capabilities, for about $20 or $30, you can add a device that connects via USB that allows you to annotate material. For us, the software that we think does annotation best is OpenBoard. This is a piece of freeware software that installs on Windows, Mac OS, and Linux free of charge. It's a great piece of software that allows you to annotate content in a way that you can see on the screen. Here we can highlight content with multiple colors of multiple thickness. We can draw on the screen in multiple colors and of multiple thickness, or we can use a laser pointer to show focus. So this is a great piece of software to use with either that stylus you saw or to use with the touch capabilities of your device. We're seeing some faculty use document cameras or creative use of a webcam to show sort of structured, written or diagrammatic content to their students. But be aware, if you have an iPad, you can also do this through the screen recording capability that's built into the operating system. So here are the instructions that Apple provides on how to do this. But then those of you may be using a Windows Surface Pro. So this is a machine that we've been recommending to faculty for about 6 or 7 years. And here the stylus allows you to easily annotate material on the screen. If you have the budget, a Wacom Cintiq allows this capability, but these are generally expensive devices. In terms of what to wear, if you are concerned, you can set up 3-point lighting, but if you don't have that capability, wearing solid colors is generally a good idea. Eyeglasses can reflect lighting, so they're best avoided if possible, and try and wear professional but comfortable clothes. If you never wear a tie normally, then wearing one on camera will make you uncomfortable. And avoid items of clothing that have fluffy edges, such as mohair sweaters. Those will start to sort of vibrate on the screen a little bit. The quality of audio is something that is sometimes ignored, but greatly impacts how video is perceived. So a decent microphone, properly positioned with pop filter, can be very helpful. You want to record in a quiet location where you'll not be disturbed, so switch off your smartphone, tell any colleagues or family members or pets to stay out of the way, and carpets and fabric wall hangings can reduce the background echo, which otherwise could make your voice sound harsh and constrained. When recording with a smartphone, take care to record in landscape rather than portrait mode, as your produced video will work best for your audience in landscape. So here, Gizmodo has great advice. Editing is an option that's made available to you via Panopto, and in general, making your video shorter is going to make it better. So here, Panopto can be used to remove the areas at the start of recording and the end of your recording that are dead air and distractions. So that was video. Let's talk briefly about discussions. So here, sometimes the way discussion boards are used online is formulaic, where we say post one original statement and then reply to two of your peers. This is hardly discussion and results in many students simply visiting the discussion board once to paste their initial post and then quickly knocking off two replies to fulfill the assignment. And this failure of design is not unknown to students. Or we have the issue of imbalance, where students write things that are cogent and they've spent a long time writing them, and then the professor replies with a trivial response. Luckily, we have academics on hand to research the problem. So there is a meta-analysis of 14 years worth of peer-reviewed work on the use of discussion boards in higher education. Published in 2015, a systematic review of empirical studies on participants' interactions in internet-mediated discussion boards as a course component in formal higher education settings is recommended to read. If you don't have time, on screen, here are the key points. Participation was the foundation of interaction, and instructor support and feedback, including assessment, was highly valued, and over time affected students' participation and peer interaction quality and quantity. Typically, peer interactions started slowly with frequent off-task and disruptive posts. The majority of peer interactions initially involved responding to an assignment, followed by supporting and constructive posts with less dialogue and rarely challenging posts. Interactions between students and instructor were overall less than peer interactions and decreased over time while peer interactions stayed consistent. And then assigned student leaders or moderators affected the quality and quantity of discussion. Perceived self-competency and intrinsic motivation led to higher quantity and quality interaction, which might relate to taking a dominating or leading role. Level of familiarity and relatedness to peers, environment, and discussion topics led to higher level peer interaction. And then the dynamics of interaction varied among groups and was related to collaborative assignments, the existence of highly motivated members, and a higher level elaboration, and the opportunity for members to contribute. So what can we take from that? So one way that we can move forward is to incentivize more thoughtful and collaborative behavior in discussion that changes the paradigm. Here, in this rubric, students receive up to 5 points a week for posting, with a maximum of 3 points for a perfect post. This simplifies grading for the instructor and provides a flexible structure that suggests to students the value of frequent interaction and more critical thinking. Rubrics work best when you provide real examples of what you're looking for and how you will grade. So with this rubric, you can see an example of previous student work and how this student work equates to the grading scheme. So to do this, I take a 3-point example, and then I simplify the example to demonstrate a 2-point one, and then simplify even further to demonstrate a 1-point post. What I strive for is something that's better than in-the-moment classroom discussion, where that discussion is largely anecdotal, perhaps with barely remembered facts and possibly incorrect information. Online, students have the ability to support their statements with hyperlinks to articles and research. Critical thinking based upon publicly available facts is what I want my students to demonstrate. This can be quite intensive for the professor at the start of the course, where you want to model good practice and write in the manner you wish your students to write with every post that you make. Providing hyperlinks and multimedia such as video and images in your post demonstrates to the students what is possible in this medium. So to reduce faculty workload in later weeks and to motivate students to produce their best work, you can assign discussion leaders. Their role is to facilitate discussion that week and to summarize eventual findings. The role of the discussion leader is rotated until every student has taken part, using groups to manage class size if required. And to help make discussion have more meaning to students beyond the points of the exercise, you can base your midterm and final exam questions upon the topics and, more importantly, the conclusions drawn in the weekly discussion. This incentivizes students to actually read the work of others and think more deeply upon the topics. Feedback is necessary for the success of an online class, so each week a recap of the pertinent points of the conversation could be shared, providing acknowledgement to the students and guidance towards where the value parts of the discussion existed. So, in an online course, the same as a face-to-face course, you want to understand your students. You can use the discussion board to guide this with a series of targeted questions that allow you and fellow students to better understand who your students are, why they're there, and what they see as outcomes for that particular course. You could also use this as a mechanism to find out what type of hardware and internet connectivity your students have, or the skills that you may employ in group exercises. Anyway, that was this for the Tech Tuesdays, for teaching online during a pandemic, perhaps for the first time. If you have follow-up questions, feel free to email me or to use the various resources through the Teaching Commons and FITS.